Hi everyone, it's Nancy Crawshaw from Angus Australia's Extension team and welcome to our first episode of Paddock Talk for 2025. We're delighted to bring these series back and we've got some incredible speakers lined up to join us throughout the year. To get started, we wanted to have a look at the impact the Angus Foundation has on the youth members who are lucky enough to be involved in the events and programs we run. With the Angus Foundation, we're extremely fortunate. We've got over 1,900 members that annually put money into the foundation. And these are the funds that help us run the events such as Roundup, Gen Angus, send people over to the University of Illinois or Kansas State, even the Trans-Tasman Exchange, and I know one of the favourites is always Tokau Beef Assessment course. So we're really excited to bring you the story of 3 young people who attended Roundup to showcase where they're from, a bit about their background, what sort of got them interested in agriculture, Angus and the beef industry, and where they want to go in their careers, how they want to make their mark in the agricultural and Angus industries. And we hope this gives you a bit of insight into where the funds from the Angus Foundation goes and the young people that you're helping at these events. Because these events are more about just the event itself, it's about the connections and the industry expert these young people get to meet at these events, which really open doors for them. So we're extremely grateful for all the support you provide us through the Angus Foundation. Next, we're going to be joined by Simon Quilty, who we know was a bit of a favourite in 2024, and we're delighted to hear his market updates and what the market has in store for the year ahead. We know we've got an exciting year planned, and I think you'll get excited by Simon's updates he's got for us. Next, we'll have the new session called the Answer Station from Hanlie, and she's going to be looking at some of the common member inquiries we're receiving and just help clear the air on some of those questions we have. So we hope you find this useful, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the year at a number of events we have. And if you've got any ideas on what you'd like to see in these episodes or other events, please let us know. We're always happy for your feedback and would love to hear from you.
This is my first Roundup and I've just heard really good things about it and the program that they run at this show, and how lots of my friends and lots of people I've heard from have just told me how great of a show it is and how it is one of the best youth shows. So I was just really excited to come and try it out for myself. Well, I actually first got into volunteering through the Duke of Edinburgh program when I did my bronze and silver awards, and because it was a component, I just started getting into it and I actually found that I really loved it, and just the different people you get to talk to and just everyone's stories. So I really enjoy getting to communicate with people who I generally probably wouldn't talk to, and getting to learn things from people as well. But I'm very passionate about advocacy and promoting the beef industry. I love volunteering. I volunteer for my local Meals on Wheels, and I also volunteer at 2 of my local shows around home as stewards. So at the Carer Show, I am a steward for the produce section, and I've done that for the past 3 years. As a young person myself, the amount of things I've gotten out of youth shows, especially here at Angus Roundup, it's just been great, and just being able to develop my skills further and learn about new things. And I think I can speak for most kids that these shows are not only a great social experience but a great educational experience as well.
I've come to Roundup this year to come and network with people and meet new people and educate youth and be able to inspire youth in ag and come and participate. I'm at my age now where I can teach younger kids, and that's what I've come to do. My passion for youth in agriculture, and I'm involved with a program called Cultivate Ag that, they provide opportunity for kids along the mid-north coast to show steers and to show cows and get their foot in the door with agriculture, whether that's not being able to have the opportunity through school, have the financial backing or the parent backing, kids that just don't have that foot in the door. So we're providing an opportunity to come and show steers with us and come to all the major events and being exposed to local shows, state shows, Wing and Beef Week, Upper Hunter Beef Bonanza, and just youth shows in general. And I've made some of my lifelong friends from kids that have had a tough time growing up, and some of them are my best mates now. And that's what's really driven me into youth in ag, and my mentors really. I know I'm only young myself, but I really enjoy educating younger kids, younger than me, and so I want to be an ag teacher when I grow up, to give back to youth in ag and to give back to the agriculture industry, because at the end of the day, we are the next generation of farmers, and for many, many years to come,
I'll never stop talking about the people in the beef industry, because I've worked in hospitality, I've worked in the city, and I've not met better people than people in agriculture and people in beef. They're always up for a laugh or a chat, and they're super supportive. That I came from nothing pretty much, and through teachers, through people, at events like Roundup, I got opportunities for work placement, and to build my skills and to sort of have opportunities to get out there and develop my personality, I guess, and my passion for the beef industry. And then even in the future, whether it be I have my own program or my own breeding herd, I'd love to be able to take on the opportunity to bring in people from backgrounds that don't have that experience or that knowledge of agriculture and sort of give them an insight into what we do, I guess. Thank you is the easiest way to say it, but it's a lot more complex than that. There's people like myself who come to these events that have no experience, and being able to showcase them what we do in beef cattle and why we're so passionate about it, I think it's a truly fantastic thing. And without the support of the people that support the Angus Foundation, it makes activities and events like this really hard to run. So with that support, it means that we can sort of showcase what we do on a really, really great level.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Paddock to Plate market update. I'm Simon Quilty from Global Agri-Trends. Today's topic is demand and supply, the equation for Australia's Angus cattle. So we've started the year, I think, in a very positive way on the back of a strong December, where global beef prices in December hit an 18-month high, with the last time we were at these prices in terms of the FAO index was around July 2022. So a really positive start, and since the lows of January 2023, we've seen an 18% increase in global beef prices. And I think this continues to rise as we move forward through 2025 and into 2026, when I'm expecting the peak in pricing to occur. For what it's worth, here's the pricing where we've got Wagyu versus crossbred, or flatbacks versus Angus feeders. And it's what I would describe as a cluster. We've got Wagyu's $4.25 a kilo live weight, Angus feeders at $4.15 and $4 on crossbreds. Part of that is related to how the market's functioning today, some of the slowness in global markets. So to me, it's very much a commodity more driven market today, which is going to lend itself, I think, to some handsome premiums for Angus and eventually Wagyu as well. But I think in the short term, it's really more about demand for commodity grain fed. So the cluster, how long will it last? It reminds me very much of what happened in early 2020. So let's look at some of the key factors. Global demand. So a good year last year, 2024 for Australia. We exported around the world 1.34 million tonnes. These were large exports, I think, on the back of a period of which most of last year liquidation of the Australian herd happened. So in contrast to others' opinions out there, I truly believe that we're going to see a tightening of supply this year and next year. USA was our largest market at 394,000, followed by Japan, 247,000, 200,000 into Korea, and slightly less into China at 193,000. Indonesia, Taiwan, and Canada were the fifth, sixth, and seventh. So overall, promising signs. We did hit safeguard into China, but overall, I think we're in for once again some strong demand into 2025 and 2026. When we look at individual countries, and China's a good example, we can see that in the past, Australian chilled beef has competed directly, particularly in 22-23, but 22 with US beef. And then in 23, as supply and dry conditions and oversupply happened in Australia, we started to trade at a discount to US beef. And today that still exists. Here we're seeing that spread between between China US prices and Australian is at about a 40% spread. But as tightening occurs in Australia and that demand remains in China and US beef becomes tight, I see Australian prices moving up, filling that 40% spread and going to meet where US prices are at today. So once again, real upside. And Angus is the big part of this equation, both for grain-fed and grass-fed chilled into China. And look, it's a similar story if we look at Korea, where US prices have been strong for probably the last year. And as a result of that, that Australian spread between Korea and between US and Australia in Korea, effectively we're sitting at about a 35% spread. Once again, with tightening out of Australia and US beef holding its value, but volume getting less as they rebuild, I can see that narrowing in Australia, moving back to what we saw in 21 and 22, in which we were tight at the hip with US prices. So once again, I see real upside in Korea market for grain-fed and grass-fed, but with regards to Angus into that market. And lastly, Japan. Now, this is the interesting one. We have seen this spread in recent months get closer together than we saw in the month of December and November. It widened back out. This market is all about commodity and about cheapness. And this is not about the Angus market. It's about flatbacks, crossbreds being fed in Australia. Japan today is the poor cousin of Asia, and to me, we'll continue to be buying mainly crossbred, grain-fed animals. But in a way, that's important to understand, because as they've shifted away from that demand for Angus, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but in a way, I think that in part explains that cluster where demand for crossbred is lifted, and we've kind of not quite got enough pull on the Angus to lift it yet. So overall, I think Japan has played a significant role in that cluster that I showed you at the start. So a 23% spread between Australian and US at the moment in terms of pricing. So when we look at the overall chilled values, Japan is the cheapest of the four major countries. US leads the charge at 11.14, and we know that strong demand is expected through most of this year and will be critical for demand for Angus. But South Korea and China are also playing important roles in that elite end of the market, grain-fed and good demand. So just keep in mind, Japan, I think, is the weak link in terms of pricing globally, and they're shifting away from Angus and more into a short-fed, grain-fed, commodity-type program, which involves flatbacks. So effectively now, when we look at some of the other key factors here, but a summary, I see Japan as the home for flatbacks. Korea, flatbacks and British cross are going into that market, but the US is British breeds, namely Angus, that's so important. China in that grain-fed end of the market, without doubt, British breeds and Angus. And if we look at EU, once again, it's British breeds and Angus. And the Middle East is the good luck story of 2024, where things have improved considerably. And once again, in that high-end grain-fed part of the market, it's British breeds and Angus leading the charge. So let's talk about the northern wet season. To me, it's critical as we move forward. And the talk of La Nina reappearing during December, which they claimed is highly unusual. What I find interesting is that if you talk to the experts that we deal with, and namely Art Douglas, who's based in the US, La Nina never really left us. It might have quietened down and weakened slightly, but we're expecting in the next 4 months, January, February, March, April, to be strong, the impact of La Nina, leading to some good wet conditions in northern Australia. So just to reflect on where Art Douglas's views are and his work based at Creighton University, Art's views are that La Nina peaked in December, but by April, we'll start to see the model starting to slow down. And, part of that, the equator still will be cold through January, indicating a La Nina summer pattern for Australia and South America. But major changes could occur by late April into May, indicating an El Nino may be coming by mid-year. So it matters because where the grass is where also the cattle and the money flows. So we've seen here in recent times in southern Queensland where the conditions have improved out of sight. And as a result, we're finding second-tier lenders in the market have opened their wallets and now financing a lot of cattle going into southern Queensland due to these excellent conditions. But interestingly, parts of Victoria and South Australia still remain dry and very problematic in terms of finishing cattle. And as a result of that, we're starting to see there's not as much money, you might say, from lenders flowing into that area. These second-tier lenders, I think, are really important as a guide on where restockers and backgrounding are starting to occur. And dare I say, follow the money. So here's where I see the next few months. We've got southern cattle and flowing north, the recent weaner sales out of Victoria. But as we get into the period of late February, March, April, the heavier cattle in Queensland, we're going to see southern processors head up there to buy. So last year, we saw a similar occurrence. I see it happening again, but even earlier. So it's all about the lack of the right cattle in the right regions and an overall tightening, I believe, that we've got across Australia. So Victorian processors, southern New South Wales processors will be marching into southeast Queensland to buy heavier cattle to bring back south. And as we've seen at the recent weaner sales in Victoria, there is a flow into northern New South Wales and Queensland of weaners. So everyone is looking for the right type of cattle. So Queensland process, will they get squeezed? And I think the answer is yes, because we've got in recent times an increase in capacity, but in particular Victoria, which originally we had at about 1,800 head per day being added since about a year and a half ago. But in actual fact, recent data shows that that's more like 2,400 head per day additional out of southern Australia. That lifts the overall extra capacity to 3,600, and I think is part of the reason why processors out of Victoria coming early is because they're trying to fill capacity. So that increased capacity is leading to more competition. So strong demand also from live cattle markets. And once again, that Queensland processor is caught in the middle. So last year, we saw some good shipments out of Australia, close to 763,527 shipped, up 13% from the previous year. Indonesia was the largest market, 537,000. It's up 50%. Vietnam, not as well performing, 119,000 head, and Malaysia and the Philippines off pretty low bases. But once again, I guess it's really all about Indonesia to me, where the action is going to occur in 2025-26. So here is the recent data that they've just released on Monday, January the 6th, on their needs in Indonesia. They're allocated 350,000 to Australia for cattle. They're looking also for 200,000 out of Brazil. This is just for feeder steers. But they're also encouraging domestic cattle ranchers in Indonesia to import 400,000 head of females to start building their own herd. So it all points to some pretty strong activity for both feeders and for breeders out of Indonesia. I think there's going to be challenges with Brazil. The tyranny of distance, the 40 days on the water versus 5 to 7 days out of Australia matters. So overall, box beef permits into Indonesia have been allocated 180,000 tonnes, and we've got also Indian buffalo of 80,000 tonnes being allocated. So it all points to a year of strong demand in Indonesia. Also, Indian buffalo prices matter. And today they sit at about 320 US cents per kilo there on the right-hand side. But I'm estimating that they'll probably go to 340 in 2025 due to the lack of supply in India itself and an overcapacity issue. So the end result is, I think when we've seen this in the past, we've seen live cattle exports move higher as well. Why? Because Indian buffalo and live cattle compete directly. And when buffalo prices improve or go higher, it makes live cattle far more affordable. And we saw that back in 2011, 12, and 13, where Indian buffalo prices moved higher to where they're at today. And with that delayed effect, we saw stronger exports out of Australia. I'm expecting around about 950,000 head, possibly in excess of 1 million, to head out of Australia this year. Some may say, do we have the cattle to do so? I think in the north we probably do. So we had that expansion in the north, but liquidation in the rest of the eastern seaboard, including southern Queensland, during the last year or so. So Australia's rebuild is yet to get going. Demand for British crossbreeds is driven today by feedlots, not by a rebuild. But I think by the middle of this year, the rebuild commences in June. And that then heightens the need for heifers. And that's when we're really going to see a lift, I think, in heifer values. But key markets such as the US, China, the Middle East, Korea are all driving that demand in the feedlot sector. So let's talk about the potential rebuild and the liquidation. Since 2018, we've had 12 quarters of liquidation, 7 quarters of the herd being static and 7 quarters of rebuilding. And I think we're about to move into that rebuild period. So for what it's worth, our latest figures were at 52.7% or thereabouts on the liquidation that's been going on. I'm expecting that we'll see that lift to 56%, and by probably June, July this year, that female kill will fall to 44%, where as we move into the back end of this year, the rebuild gets going in earnest. Keep in mind, 47% is the break even. So I think though, even with these higher female kills, overall numbers being slaughtered will start to fall away, I think, after the first quarter of this year. So higher female kills, but overall lower kills in total are starting to go through the system from the second quarter of this year as we move into a rebuild by the end of the year. So with that said, thanks for today. I look forward to further updates through the year. And if you've got any questions, feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again, and have a good year. Cheers.
Thank you, Simon, for your market update. Hi everyone, Hanlie Jansen here from the Extension team. I come to you from our most recent addition to Paddock Talk, the Answer Station, your member inquiries explained. In this new segment of Paddock Talk, we hope to cover over the most recent, frequently asked questions and explain them. With everyone currently in full swing preparation for the autumn bull selling season, we've had an influx of questions about traits observed. An animal's traits observed table sits underneath their estimated breeding values and indicates the animal's data that has been analysed within the Trans-Tasman Angus Cattle Evaluation, or TACE. There are several factors that can influence whether or not data that has been submitted to Angus Australia is analysed within TACE. So today, I'm going to quickly cover over what these factors are. Firstly, it may simply be due to timing. The data may have missed the submission deadline for the most recent TACE run. If this is the case, you'll simply need to wait till the next TACE run. You can view the submission deadlines on our Angus Australia website under TACE, collecting performance data. Secondly, the data submitted may not have met the taste collection guidelines. To ensure that when you're collecting data, it meets the taste collection guidelines, you can find these on our Angus Education Centre. Thirdly, the animal may have been an outlier. An outlier is an animal whose performance data falls outside the expected range for their contemporary group. You will find outliers reported in your genotype exclusions report, which is located in your members download section of Angus Tech. Lastly, for any of our subjectively measured traits, like docility, carving ease, or structure, it is important for the taste analysis that animals are in a contemporary group of greater than 1 and that there is variation within the contemporary group. Additionally, for structure, you'll need to ensure that you submit both front and rear feet scores for claw set and foot angle. And you'll need to ensure that either a 200 or 400 day weight is analysed within taste. If you have any further questions about traits observed or other questions, please feel free to reach out to the Extension team or our Member Services Department. Thank you for tuning in to Paddock Talk. It's been great to have you here. We look forward to seeing you next time.